I want to start with a quote by J.K. Chesterton, who said this. This seems to me the main problem. How can we contrive to be at once astonished at the world and yet at home in it? How can this world give us at once the fascination of a strange town and the comfort and honor of being our own town? Wonder brings us down to size. Think of the images of our galaxy, which reveal that it is just one of billions more. And when you've stared kind of into a dark, endless ocean, they right size you, right? Those occasions of doing those things. Such images remind us that the universe is more vast than we can imagine. They leave us with a sense of wonder that overwhelms sometimes. And in the face of such an incomprehensible abyss of the mystery, one can't help feel but humbled and small. But religion never wants us to stop there. Hold on, it says. Just stand at the abyss a bit longer. Lean in a little bit more. And when you do, you'll realize that this path doesn't end with a deep darkness that doesn't care. No, if we remain there and witness it long enough, a new message emerges. Or as my husband Scott says, you look into the vast mystery and surprisingly it stares back as if to say, welcome home. Indeed, as astronomers tell us, the contemplation of the universe doesn't make them feel smaller. It makes them realize the larger story of which we are all a part. We are stardust, they remind us, right? From the vastness we came, and to it will we return. In other words, the path of wonder is not so much about feeling small, it's about feeling connected. So lately I've been thinking about what it means to keep us connected to that feeling of home within myself, among others, and to that which is beyond my community, to something larger than myself, and how easy it is to lose sight of that. And it's also made me think about how wonder sneaks in and gives it back to us, that feeling of home, of feeling connected. And it's led me to two stories that I want to share with you this morning. And I want you to think about these as stories, as little gifts, okay? Here's the first. My daughter, Neva, this past year, she was in her junior year in college, and she sent me this essay that she was working on based on kind of this experience she had with her horse. So first I want to explain the experience she had with her horse, and then I'll go into some of her essay and her thoughts about it. But here's the thing. So as some of you know, I live on a horse farm when I'm not on Cape Cod with the congregation that I'm serving right now. I have a horse farm in upstate New York, and we moved here basically because I got a kid who was a barn rat from an early age. So when she was 13, we bought her a horse, a thoroughbred off the track from Saratoga Springs. Now, given the fact that this horse was 7 at the time, you would think he'd be less wily, but he was still quite high-spirited and very anxious. So when she got him, she kind of had her hands full with training him. So after a couple of months, she and our trainer and a friend of theirs loaded up their horses into a horse trailer to bring it to an indoor ring. And this is in the middle of winter, okay? And they didn't go that far. It was like, I don't know, 2.5 miles from home. And they get to the barn that they were at with both horses in the back. And when they got to that barn and they stopped, there was like this big shift in the horse trailer, which none of them had experienced before. So they went around to figure out what was going on, and they realized that my daughter's horse had managed to get half of his body up on the shelf in front of him. Now, if you don't know this about horse trailers, almost all horse trailers have in front of a horse, when you load them in, they have a shelf in front of them that hits them at like chest level for a horse, right? So you can put like hay and feed and stuff in there and keep them occupied while you're trailing them. But none of them had seen what my daughter Neva's horse had ever done, because he had gotten half of his body up onto that shelf in front of him, and they were trying to figure out how to get him off. Now, you would think in some ways that it wouldn't be that hard to back a horse out in order to get him down, but it's incredibly hard. So while they are talking about like, how are we going to get this, how are we going to get Crimson down, which is her horse's name, that horse manages to turn his body sideways. Now, in this trailer, there's like a 3x3 window right next to his head that you often can open up to let him have air. And he managed, while he has himself up on the shelf, he managed to turn his entire body sideways out through the window, pull himself out, and drop 5 feet down onto the ground and get himself out of the window. So in order to explain how really crazy that is, it's like the equivalent of a guy who's probably 6'4", weighs like 250 pounds, tries to wriggle their way through a dog door that's made for a schnauzer, right? Like a 35-pound schnauzer. And that, by the way, is on the ground. Remember, this is 5 feet up. So when that horse hits the ground, he bolts, like he goes flying off from the farm. So my daughter bolts after him, but it's the middle, it's like, I don't know, 7, 8 o'clock at night, and it's the middle of winter, and it's about 19 degrees. We live in upstate New York. There was snow all over the place. And she's trying to get this horse to calm down, who's just running. She can see him run back and forth through this pasture in front of her, but she can't get him to pay attention. So she's like clicking and calling his name, Crimson, Crimson. She's out there for like 40 minutes. She cannot figure out how to get him to come back. And then after a while, she can't find him. After 40 minutes, she walks back to the barn, hoping that he will have come back. Well, sure enough, he came back to the barn about 5 minutes before she shows up, and he's there panting, sweating. They had put him into a stall. She goes into the stall with him. They had given him a bunch of food to calm down, and she just basically goes into the stall and rubs him to calm him down. Now, when I say that is a Herculean move on his part, it is. It also shows you, though, how incredibly anxious and fearful this animal was. The advice she got at the time from kind of the horse world regarding his anxiety was a little discouraging. She thought she'd be offered training techniques of encouragement and care, but she was often instructed to implement intense, punishing approaches. And the primary wisdom was that his behavior out of, being trailered was out of line, that he needed to learn to respect her and know she was the alpha who had the power. It was one of domination and supremacy. And my daughter was told that she should even hit him if necessary because he was so disrespectful. But she felt uncomfortable doing that and didn't really understand how that could be helpful. At one point, she was told to put him in the trailer, and if he freaked out, to beat him with the end of a broom. And to my daughter's credit and consternation, this brutal mentality terrified her. So given this weird directive of superiority and domination, she felt at a loss and struggled to connect with her horse and to train him. All of this got further complicated when her own struggle with anxiety started to impact her relationship with horses overall. And being easily overwhelmed, she found herself separated from her own self and from others, ultimately not feeling at home in her own skin. And this struggle of her own increased until her junior year in high school, when the isolation of COVID actually gave her space to take a hard look at herself and her emotional well-being. She says it wasn't until she was ready to face her own anxiety issues that she could face and address her horse's anxiety as well, mainly because she could see herself in him. She recognized the anxiety he felt was akin to her own. In fact, his reactions were that dissimilar from her own. And once she made that connection between how he was feeling and how she was feeling, all she wanted to do was to stop him from having that miserable experience any longer. And it changed her approach to their relationship. So for her, it was all about how she decided to build a bond with him. So contrary to the harsh kind of tactics that others were encouraging, she talked to him quietly, reassured him in a calm voice. She hung out with him with no plan, really, just befriending him, basically comforting him in the way that she wanted to be comforted when she was anxious. She would go sit out in the pasture with him. She would take him into a stall and just sit there and relax with him. And as she continued to do that, he softened, he calmed, he adjusted, he relaxed, he stopped stomping around and shaking. He listened more. He became super affectionate with her. Now, here's what my daughter writes about this experience. By connecting with Crimson and putting myself into this so-called field with him, I was able to reconnect with myself and change our relationship. Crimson's heightened sense of awareness of his surroundings and how he reacted to them made me realize how I respond and interact with my own surroundings. By being able to connect with Crimson in order to calm his inner anxieties and witness his change in reactions, I was actually able to look inward and change my own. In helping Crimson, I helped and healed myself. In his book, Why We Take Animal Voyages, Sam Anderson writes this: "It's hard to put into words exactly what we are looking for when we go out to meet an animal. The need probably goes deeper than language. On some level, I think we are looking to orientate ourselves, to locate ourselves on an accurate map of the universe. Not using the coordinates we've been handed by human culture, the self-flattering, narcissistic, anthropocentric fantasies of a world made of us in our own image. Something in us yearns for accuracy, even if it comes at the price of a demotion. It is liberating to be decentered, and animals always are happy to perform this service." Neva and my husband Scott have a saying when they are frustrated kind of with humanity, oftentimes when there is a lack of empathy of people or awareness for others, they say to each other, "We are all just monkeys." In other words, we too are just animals. Neva comments and says, "Our species seems to have replaced cooperation and community with competition. We are surrounded by power grabs. There's a lack of care for the greater good of our own species, other species, and the earth itself. We have forgotten how precious it is that we are even all here. Horses have helped me reconnect to a deeper, more dormant part of myself. This dormant part is one that is not inherently provided in our society. And it brings up some important questions. What has our inability to see ourselves as animals cost us? Have we come disconnected from ourselves? Has our inability to relate to other animals not allowed us to relate to one another? You know what? I love those questions. They're questions worth taking to heart, it seems to me, because they have to do with wonder. Creating a bond with another animal, not just a human animal, can be magic. It frankly taps into the wondrous and insanely wild story of evolution that is miraculous and mysterious and kind of mind-blowing. Her story helps her step into this great appreciation for the deep primordial sameness we share with the plants and animals of this planet. And when my daughter shed the flawed superiority complex we so falsely hold up as humans, she tapped into actually a richer part of her that brought her back to herself and a more grounded, fuller her. It brought her back home to her own well-being. Wonder saved her, in a sense. Second story I want to share with you is about my friend Wendy. So Wendy is a really good friend of mine. About 2.5 years ago, she lost her son, Max, at the age of 27, inexplicably and unexpectedly. And when her son died as an only child, she lost her sense of home. She no longer belonged to this world. Her life, this world, was foreign to her without him in it. Every day, life was strange and a desolate place. I did Max's memorial about a month after he died. And Wendy and her husband, Don, are both research psychologists. And we talked a lot about what to include. But one of the pieces that they wanted included in that memorial is this piece by Aaron Friedman about how we are still connected to each other after death through science. And here's a little excerpt from that. He wrote this. You want a physicist to speak at your funeral. You want the physicist to talk to your grieving family about the conservation of energy so they will understand that your energy has not died. You want the physicist to remind your sobbing mother about the first law of thermodynamics, that no energy gets created in the universe and none is destroyed. You want your mother to know that all of your energy, every vibration, every BTU of heat, every wave of every particle that was her beloved child remains with her in this world. That piece, by the way, certainly connected my friend to her son, and she and her husband needed that to resonate with them deeply. This last summer, she came over to the house and she had like something almost like a secret she wanted to tell me about, like something inside of her. She was like almost vibrating with excitement about something. She said she had just listened to this piece of the podcast Radio Lab, and it was an episode called Fetal Consequences. And what she told me blew my mind. Blew my mind. So it turns out that scientists are finding that when a woman is pregnant, the placenta that surrounds a developing fetus is porous. And they've discovered that fetal cells from the baby are making their way into the woman's body and then staying there after the birth. Let me say that again. Scientists are finding that when a woman is pregnant, the placenta that surrounds a developing fetus is porous, right? So they've discovered that the fetal cells from the baby are making their way into the woman's body and then staying there after the birth, long after they've given birth. They are finding fetal cells in women who are 70 plus years old. So in truth, 70-plus-year-old women still have their children's fetal cells in them. She also learned after listening to the podcast and then digging into the data that these fetal cells that remain in the body often migrate to different organs. And they are suspecting more and more that when there is distress in an organ, like let's say the liver, these fetal cells gather around the mother's liver to help her and protect her from disease. So her children, in effect, are protecting her from harm. So when she told me this, I couldn't believe it. So I mean, I said, so Max is still in you? And she goes, "Yup." And I said, wait a minute. So Don is in you too, right? Because Don is Max's dad, so Don's in her too. "Yup," she said. At that point, we both had like tears coming down our face, and it was so crazy. And then I went through my own kids, and I was like, wait a minute. I got my husband Scott in me because he's Neva's dad. And then, of course, I realized I have my ex-husband in me too because he's the parent of my two oldest children. And I got each of my kids in me. Now, and how crazy is that those fetal cells are working to keep me safe, I said to her. "Yep," she said. And I'm telling you, those tears stayed with us for a while. Blown away. So was Wendy. And I'm telling you that this wondrous, awe-filled information healed her. It brought her back to herself as home, to her life on Earth, to this planet as home. Since that time, I've thought a lot about why that made her feel better, right? Because in truth, Max isn't really in her. It's his cells that are in her. But for her and for me, I guess, her gaining this knowledge of one of the mysteries of the universe, of our interconnectedness, that physical fact just reinforced an emotional feeling she already had that all of us also already have. We all have an inkling that we are so intricately connected that it is truly the way that the world works, but we forget it. I mean, it's not learning the fact that we come from the stars that hits the emotional piece. It's this dormant, almost intuitive feeling we have that it is so cellular, miraculous, intergalactic that we are, well, filled with wonder and brought back home. We are brought back home to ourselves and to those who were once here, reminding us that in truth, they are still here, just differently ordered. Here's the thing. I started this off by talking about offering stories as gifts. Gifts I think you could use right now. The political landscape around us is ramping up. Vitriol is spewed each time you turn on the dial of the radio in the morning and at night. Camps are formed and continually solidified. Language like evil and un-American and the chosen ones are on the rise. Division is growing. A meanness that makes you feel icky is kind of pervasive, and I know that I can feel angsty kind of a lot. It kind of permeates my days lately. And there is a sourness that can grow to neighbor and stranger alike in these times. It's enough to have you forget that this life of ours is miraculous and beautiful and meaningful, which it is. I know that I need reminders. And I need stories like these to remind me that, hey, life is grand and beautiful and amazing. It just is. So friends, if you too are feeling sad or lost or overwhelmed or just plain icky about the state of affairs right now, I want you to grab onto and hold on to some wonder. It's something that you can't usually find in the stores at Walmart or Target. Takes a little more effort to do, but I promise you it will be well worth it. You may have to do a silent meditation on your couch and think about the miraculous, astounding, crazy idea that out of 7 billion people on the planet, there is only one amazing, brilliant, creative you. Only one with your unique quirks and blessings, one with your way of seeing the world, exploring the world, sharing the world. And that alone is a huge wow. You may have to sit with your cat or your dog or your horse or your guinea pig or your lizard. And remember, we are all animals just like them. We are part of the same family of creatures that were born and will die. We all need comfort and care. We all need reassurance and sustenance. We all need others to survive. They are not that dissimilar from us. We all depend on the goodwill and love from another, whether it's human or otherwise. And man, how crazy is that? That no matter what animal species we engage with, they have many of the same qualities that we do. They all need more than themselves to survive and thrive. So we're all connected. That's amazing. If you are in need of some celestial reminders of your origins and your connection to the larger human family and the universe, just walk outside and look up once. If you are lucky on a clear night and you can find the constellation Orion, on the edge is the star Betelgeuse. It's a super red giant star, 650 light years away. That star and you are made up of the same stardust. And because the star is 650 light years away, that would be around the year 1372 here on Earth. So as my friend Coco says, if I am feeling genetically connected to Betelgeuse and other stars at the particular Earth time moment when I look up, I am time traveling. Then she goes on and she says, Betelgeuse exploded a few years ago and it blew its top, as was verifiable by the last Hubble photographs. And well, in fact, it will burst into a supernova status that will be visible from Earth in only about 100,000 years. Who will see the sight in 100,000, 650,000 years? And will our stardust still be circulating the universe? Who knows, my friends? But in the face of that kind of wonder and mystery, that kind of cosmic symbiosis, you can't help but feel connected to all that was before you and all that will come after you. You can't help but feel like it's a balm for an ickiness you know not how to shake off. My friends, just remember, wonder is near you. It's yours for the taking, the keeping, the holding, and the healing. So when you need it, find it and reconnect. And remember that this incredible cosmic tale you not only belong to, but is your birthright and your story too. And that, friends, that's a holy bananas if I ever heard one. Remember that. May it be so. Amen.